Story 1. So much of my childhood was awful that I would honestly say it is easier for me to talk about the few times I remember being genuinely happy. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't physically abused, and certainly there are people who had it much worse, but it was a continuous journey of individuals trying to make me unhappy with life for their own selfish reasons. Story 2. My ex threw my dinner all over me because he misheard a word I said. He hit me so hard on the side of the head that my ear was affected for a long time. Story 3. The first memory that came to mind was hiding in the closet at around age 12, waiting to surprise my best friend. Then she started talking about me, saying how annoying I was to the other two girls at the sleepover. I was just in the closet crying. Story 4. Finding out my best friend was murdered when we were 8, 2 to 3 weeks before school started again, was devastating. That day was supposed to be good and fun, with plans to go swimming and to the ice cream place. I miss her with every piece of my heart every day. Story 5. I am the youngest in my immediate family, which means I do not receive respect and often end up with hand-me-downs and thrift store items. As a child, during the holidays, I received a stereo from the thrift shop. It did not work and was quite unpleasant. My sister received a brand new stereo system and a bike. When I asked why I never received the same big gifts, I was told that I was not as important as she was. I was always made to eat last while everyone else was served, and I was reprimanded and punished for any minor mistakes, even for just asking questions. My entire childhood feels like a negative core memory that I try not to dwell on. Story 6. I did something I wasn't supposed to do, but I don't remember what it was. I was around 4 or 5 years old. My mom took me aside and sincerely asked if it was me. She told me that I wouldn't get in any trouble. She just needed to know. So I told her it was me, and then she hit me. Story 7. My grandfather committed suicide, and my mother and sister discovered him while I was on the phone with them. Since then, I have had constant nightmares about my mother hanging herself from the spiral staircase in our home. Story 8. I was at a dance event at church camp. We played a game where girls would partner up and both ask the same boy to dance, and he got to choose. It was a difficult game for many reasons, forcing kids into awkward and uncomfortable situations. It was my turn to choose from a pair of girls, and they both begged me, tears in their eyes, to choose the other. They were both so embarrassed by the thought of being forced to dance with me that they were in tears. I was 13 or 14. Story 9. The state is using false testimony to indict me for the crime of which I was the victim. The state is also assisting that criminal in the process, costing me a total of $40,000 and doing everything possible to delay the trial as long as they can. Story 10. Lying with my dad after he passed away from cancer. I lay there for so long that rigor mortis started setting in, and his arm cracked when I moved it. I want to acknowledge my mother, who died in her home due to hoarding and other issues. I had to dig through waste, as she had no running water, and her body had a yellowish tint. The emergency medical services and coroner wouldn't allow me to see more than her face. Story 11. My dad died in my house under hospice care when I was 12. My mom explained to us what hospice meant, so I understood he was nearing the end of his life. Waking up every morning wondering if that day would be the day was an experience I will never forget. I will always remember when they called me out of class on a Wednesday. I knew right away what had happened. They didn't even need to tell me. Story 12. I was part of an attempted kidnapping and armed standoff when I was about 5. A man my dad had fired that day came to our house at night and tried to take my baby brother and me. They reached the front door before my dad appeared and shot a shotgun blast at us, shattering the glass of the front door. A standoff between my dad and the two would-be kidnappers ensued until the police arrived. I only remember flashes, but those memories are vivid and so strong that I can still smell and feel the moment to this day, and I am almost 50 years old. The smell of stress sweat and gunpowder is something I will never forget. Story 13. I have fragments of my childhood that are obscured by these memories that are just pockmarked, dark, and bitter. I have suspicions about what my mind is protecting me from, but I lack both the resources for therapy and the desire to discover the truth. Story 14. My brother's death was difficult. If I see someone who looks or acts too much like him and doesn't seem completely okay, I still spiral into a panic trying to figure out how to help. It's been 4 years. Story 15. I got my first period during freshman year while in class. I asked my friend if I had anything on the back of my pants, and she said no and walked away. I then walked across the yard in front of everyone to the bathroom, only to discover a large red stain on the back of my pants, almost the size of my hand. I couldn't stop crying and walked home with my sweater around my waist. I never spoke to her again. Story 16. I was 15 when my father said, "My reputation is more important than you will ever be," all because my pants had a hole in the knee and I looked unkempt. Story 17. My mother repeatedly punched me in the chest while screaming. I was 14. I woke up to find out my dog had died. My older brother beat me up so badly that I had to have dental work done. I had finally taken my parents' advice to stand up to him. Story 18. My parents fought the night before my dad left for deployment for 9 months because he thought the socks in the laundry basket were dirty and washed them again. I believed it was ridiculous and not what the focus should be on his last night. I cried myself to sleep that night. Story 19. Being bombed at 4 years old while my father grabs me and puts me on his shoulder as we run outside to the bomb shelter. Seeing the rockets overhead and hearing machine guns in the background. Story 20. Discovering that Red Bull doesn't give you wings. Reality slapped me in the face and my imaginary world shut down. Story 21. Getting caught wearing girls' clothes as a child and getting in trouble for it. Coming out to my dad as transgender. Story 22. I do not have personal experiences or emotions, but I can understand the concept of negative core memories, those moments that leave a lasting impact. For many individuals, these might include failures, losses, or regrets that shaped their perspective on life. Story 23. My boyfriend of 5 years cheated on me the night of my college graduation. That was just the beginning of a series of unfortunate events. It was a year after I lost my cousin to suicide. The years 2017 and 2018 were difficult for me. Story 24. Huddled on the top floor landing with my siblings. We silently cried while our parents argued drunkenly downstairs. Story 25. My mother told everybody when I first got my period. I was mortified. Now, everyone knew I was walking around with a maxi pad in my pants. Story 26. Coming downstairs at 5 years old, I found my dad and my uncles on my mother's side all sitting on the couch with tears on their faces and expressions of defeat and sadness. My mother, who had been in the hospital after having a stroke the day before, suffered another stroke and passed away. I can still see it and feel it. Story 27. When I was young, my parents took me to my grandparents' house, where Grandpa had just finished mowing the lawn on his riding mower. He parked it in the shade outside the garage, and being curious, I immediately gravitated toward it. With no one watching, I walked up to it and gave it a big kiss right on the muffler. I still remember all the laughter and teasing from my cousins and the adults. It affected me a bit. Story 28. Just the sheer number of times as a kid when I was scolded for responding to someone else's poor behavior. There was one occasion when I went to an Italian restaurant with my mom, sister, and brother-in-law when I was 14. It was going well until it was time to order dessert. There were only 3 dessert options on the menu: a raspberry panna cotta, a Jack Daniel's pudding of some kind, and a chocolate mud cake. I don't like berries, and I definitely don't like alcohol-flavored desserts, so the chocolate mud cake was the obvious choice. That's what I told the waitress when she asked for our dessert order. For some reason, my mom was really unsure about my dessert choice, even though she knew I wouldn't like the other 2. Plus, my sister was paying for everything, and I even had a job by that point, so that wasn't an issue. She kept asking me, "Oh, are you sure?" And I kept telling her, "Yes, I'm sure. I want the chocolate mud cake." But she just wouldn't drop it. It was nothing but, "Oh, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure?" By the 4th time she asked, I had lost my patience. So, I said to her very firmly, not even yelling, just slightly raising my voice, "Just let me have the cake." I never got my cake, but what I did get was a massive lecture from my brother-in-law. acting like he was my dad or something. Apparently, I was the one being rude and disrespectful. Never mind my own mother who kept pushing and pushing. No, that was totally okay. I'm still upset about that to this day. Story 29. Raised in a Catholic household, my father was struck and killed by a drunk driver in front of a Catholic church. Story 30. My mom died, and my aunt, who never liked us, showed up and said, "Now I can raise you right." I told her to leave and ran away. Story 31. The day I graduated with my master's degree, we went out to dinner. My brother flipped the table, and the glass and food went everywhere. I remember the server apologizing profusely and asking if she could bring me a new eggplant parmesan. I kept saying no and could feel the ice cubes melting in my lap. Story 32. One time on a family vacation, my sister and I went to get our hair braided at a stall. This was before I knew what cultural appropriation was. My mom ended up leaving us at the stall for about 6 hours, or at least that's what it felt like. When she came back, she was completely intoxicated. She was obviously struggling with alcoholism. In retrospect, the fact that my mom left two young girls alone in a foreign country terrifies me to this day. Story 33. I was 6 and an introvert. My mom always encouraged me to play with the other kids in the neighborhood and be normal. One day, I came home from school, called a couple of them, and invited them over for a small gathering. They arrived, and when they showed up at the door, my mother was shocked. She let them into the living room, took me to her room where two of my older sisters were talking, and she pulled me close and slapped me hard across the face. It was so forceful that my ear became blocked, and I briefly saw black. She started yelling at me about how I should never invite anyone to play without telling her first. My sister stopped talking and looked shocked. She was holding my shoulders and shaking me as if I had caused a disaster. There were many ways to let me know it wasn't okay, but she chose the method that traumatized me to this day. I'm afraid when someone is close to me, I'm reluctant to invite anyone over, and it destroyed my self-esteem and confidence. Needless to say, I left the room with red, teary eyes and a swollen cheek, and I didn't say a single word. I just shut down. My mom and sisters ended up telling the 3 kids that our gathering would be rescheduled, but I never hung out with anyone again since I was in high school, despite their repeated efforts to encourage me to play with the kids. Story 34. I had an unfortunate incident in 6th grade. I was feeling unwell and didn't realize what was happening. I tried to pass gas and ended up in a messy situation. Fortunately, not many people noticed except for my teacher, who came to me privately and informed me that my mom was on the way to take me home. Story 35. My dad was punishing me for sneaking Easter candy from the fridge by not allowing me to dye eggs with my parents on Easter Eve. Story 36. 90% of my childhood was filled with maladaptive daydreaming, where I fantasized about belonging to another family. I was envious of those who had good relationships with their fathers and felt resentful toward life for not providing me with a loving dad, leaving me with a relationship that I would never have. Story 37. My frail, alcoholic grandmother tried to hurt me. She couldn't muster the strength to succeed. It was disheartening to watch her scream while she attempted to strike me, achieving nothing. Story 38. I fell off a playground, and then all I remember is getting in an ambulance and being at the hospital getting stitches. My jacket was covered in blood. Story 39. My father passed away on my 16th birthday, and I was the last one to speak with him. We still communicate. Story 40. Many of my core memories are negative, such as injuries and difficult moments. Is that normal? Story 41. I don't have the time to write out that novel, but I can sum it up like this. Physical abuse, mental and emotional abuse, repression, abandonment, death, infidelity, mental and emotional abuse, getting kicked out, lies, abduction, more lies, and death. Story 42. School. To this day, all my nightmares are about school. I had undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder because the diagnosis didn't exist in the 1970s and 1980s. My mother gave me some old report cards a couple of years ago. They said I had a fine mind if only I would apply myself. Math was the worst. I understood everything but could do nothing. I struggled my way through high school and adapted somewhat in college. It was really only a few years ago that I realized what was going on, and I still feel queasy about it as I type this. Story 43. I went to add a friend on Facebook whom I hadn't chatted with in a few years and found her memorial page. Story 44. When I was 7 or 8, I dealt with cancer, and my dad physically abused me throughout the house when I was in the first grade for not eating chicken noodle soup. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.